Show here from Ocean Casino's Gallery Bar Book and Games in Atlantic City. Mark Farzetta along with you. We'll introduce the panel in a second, but welcome into super wild card round of the NFL playoffs, where your Philadelphia Eagles coming into the playoffs, of course, riding not necessarily a high, to say the absolute least, losing 5 of 6, but they go into the playoffs at 11-6 on the season to face the 9-8 Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And if I told you in Week 3 that these two teams are going to be facing each other in the wild card round of the playoffs, I'm sure you'd be disappointed that the Eagles were only limping into the playoffs in the wild card and not a number 1 seed in the NFC. But these two teams couldn't be more different than they were in that Week 3 matchup. So to break it all down and talk about Eagles and Bucks kicking it off in the wild card round, Mark Farzetta, we have Bill Colarulo, we have Seth Joyner, of course, Eagles Hall of Famer, and Adam Malamut himself. I'm going to start it off with this, and I know it's something that might get the good vibes going in a game that not a lot of people are expecting the Eagles to play particularly well in. However, how about them Cowboys? And does the way the Cowboys play, Bill, that is add maybe to any of your optimism going into tonight's game?
It sure does, Farzy. I mean, number one, it made my Sunday. That was for sure. But this Eagles team has been saying all week that the playoffs are a different season, that we are 0-0. And you look at what happened not only yesterday, but on Saturday. The Houston Texans dominated the number 1 defense in the NFL against the Cleveland Browns. The Dallas Cowboys, who have won 16 straight games at home, got dominated by a 7th seed Green Bay Packers. So it is officially a new season, and I got some hope today, Farzy.
That's good. I think the good vibes are going based on what went down in yesterday's games, of course. But the one thing that has been kicked around a lot ever since the season ended, and really even before that, Seth, was all about this proverbial playoff switch. Eagles, as I pointed out already, as we all know by now, lost 5 of 6, limped into the playoffs, unfortunately, had the number 1 overall seed in their grasp, and then absolutely lost it to end the season. Do you believe, Seth, in the proverbial playoff switch?
I don't. I think that, at certain points in the year, you kind of are who you are. But I got a different feeling about this. Even in my show last week, I picked the Eagles to lose, and I've kind of switched up a little bit because somewhere deep down inside, I feel like if there's any fight in them whatsoever, it'll come out tonight. If it doesn't come out tonight, then I'm extremely worried about not only this team, but this coaching staff moving forward.
All right, well, let's stay on that note then for a second then, because then the obvious follow-up question to that is Nick Sirianni. Do you believe he truly is coaching for his job tonight?
Well, I think the outcome of the game will determine whether he's actually coaching for his job or not. I think if they get blown out, if they get beat up the way they got beat up against the Giants last week, that there's some conversations that Jeffrey Lurie and Howard Roseman have to have about whether they move on or what their choice is going to be as far as, how they're going to deal with the coaching staff moving forward. I think you have to have that conversation. Now, if they win the game, that conversation changes a little bit. If they, lose the game by a small margin, I think that changes a little bit, but the conversation still happens. But if they just come out here and play the way that they played the last 2 weeks, they've got to have some serious conversations. You guys know, I told you before, I'm not one of those people that's huge on talking about whether guys should or shouldn't lose their jobs, but I think you have to evaluate it after the monumental collapse from 10-1, going 1-5 over the last 6 weeks and then turning around in the playoffs and get your doors blown off. You got to have some serious reservations about where the team is going and how they're being led where they're going.
Absolutely. Adam, I'll lay it out like this. I think that Nick Sirianni gets canned if this team goes out and absolutely lays an egg tonight. If he tried to get him up for Week 18 against the Giants and that was an epic fail, and you try to do the same type of thing against the Buccaneers here in the wild card round of the playoffs, given the way the season ended, if they get annihilated, I think he's fired. If it's a close one, then I think they just let go of the coordinators. Maybe they decide to hold on to Matt Patricia and let him have a full year in the offseason, but Brian Johnson's probably out. They win, and then we reevaluate for next week. But where are you at as far as whether or not Nick Sirianni is on that proverbial hot seat? And before you answer that, I'm sorry, I wanted to mention Jay Glazer earlier today, a report came out from him saying that he is not on the hot seat, but of course the game has to be played tonight. Where are you at as far as Nick Sirianni and that hot seat goes?
Did you just cite Jay Glazer or Wikipedia?
Jay Glazer, sir.
All right. So you guys know that I'm a bit of a history buff. I really enjoy history and I enjoy quotes. And I think it was Alexander Hamilton that said the Dallas Cowboys suck. So if we can move back to the Eagles now, I think that look, the guy's lost the team. I think he's on the hot seat. I don't know if he loses his job, but I think he loses a lot of control. And I think that what happens today will dictate who's going to come back next year, who's going to do the play calling, what level of influence he has on who his assistants will be. And that's important. As a head coach, you want the ability to control your destiny. And if you have other people coming in who you don't necessarily have the choice of, then you're really on the hot seat. So I think either way, things are going to change. The question is how much. But I think we're going to win tonight, so we don't have to worry about that tonight.
All right, so there's some optimism. Now, of course, you guys can comment on the show here throughout the broadcast and let us know exactly where you're at as far as whether or not this Eagles team is going to win this game and your confidence level, of course, going into tonight. But let's start it out with this. If the Eagles, Seth, are going to win this game tonight, this is one of those games where if you look at the numbers, it lends itself to the Eagles' favor, where they get to do the thing they want to do anyway, which is throw the ball. They're taking on one of the worst pass defenses in the entire NFL, and what you're facing tonight against the Bucs. They're a very good run team as far as stopping the run, are the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. 8th best team in the NFL at stopping the run. How do the Eagles go about this game tonight? Do they tempt fate and run, or do they do the thing that they're going to be most comfortable doing anyway, or the thing they want to do the most, which is throw that football?
Well, they're different football teams, but if I take you all the way back to the Bucs game early in the season, Tampa Bay going into that game was also a highly ranked, defensive rush team against the run. And the Eagles ran the ball 41 times for 201 yards. So I get the sense that, you can kind of throw those numbers out the window. If the Eagles are smart, they're going to look back at that game and say, hey, we were able to run the football. And if we were able to run the football then, there's no reason why we shouldn't be able to run it then. This game. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be super run heavy, but at least you won't be in a situation where they're just going to come out and just be throwing the ball all over the map. Your number one wide receiver is down tonight. That tells me that Dallas Goedert has to be more of a focal point. We had a Quez Watkins, sighting last week, 93 yards receiving last week out of him. So maybe his confidence is rising. But in order for this offense to work efficiently, they've got to get to a point tonight where they're willing to take the underneath throws, the short to intermediate routes. And I was reading an article earlier today that talked about Jalen Hurts has been a little upset, with how the offense has been run because they want him to take shots down the field. And he wants to move the chains, according to this report. Now, I don't know how much truth there is to it, but when you look at his body language over the last 10 weeks, it's been like, okay, I'll throw the ball down the field if you want to. It's not really what I want to do, but I'm going to throw it, and if it doesn't work out, Nick, it's on you, And his body language has kind of spoken to that. The smart thing to do is when you're playing against really good defenses is just take what they give you, because this is a high blitz team, but they're also a team that likes to play zone. And you've got enough weapons to take advantage of the zone if you're willing to take advantage of the short to intermediate routes. When you get them in a position where you can take shots because you have the lead, then take the shots. And then lastly, the most important thing they've got to do is they've got to adjust their mindset and their philosophy as far as how the blitz is concerned, okay? Tampa Bay doesn't have great cornerbacks. They've got some good safeties, but they don't have great cornerbacks. And I think that, in situations where you see blitzes, you got to go max protection, okay? You got to bring the tight end back in. You got to have him help. You got to keep the back end. You got to have him help. You got to zone everything off and give Jalen an opportunity to hit some adjusted routes instead of taking shots down the field. Now, if they can do that, if they can adjust that mindset, then I think they've got a very good shot at winning this football game in a big way. But if you keep doing the things that you've been doing for 18 weeks and you can't bring yourself to see that the adjustment is necessary, then we're in for another long night and another week next week talking about what could have been, what should have been, and where this team is headed along with this coaching staff.
All right, let's keep it with that theme. So I think one of the big players in tonight's game, other than Jalen Hurts having a very efficient game, I think it has to be a guy like DeAndre Swift. And you talk about the game that they had in Week 3 against these Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They ran the ball 40 times. 10 of those were, of course, Jalen Hurts runs, not all designed. Some, of course, were scrambles. But a guy like DeAndre Swift had himself a night that night as they ran it for over 200 yards in Week 3. How vital, not just in the run game, but also the pass game, Bill, do you think a guy like DeAndre Swift could be tonight?
I think DeAndre Swift has to have a huge game on offense. Seth mentioned it. A.J. Brown's out, probably your best offensive player in A.J. Brown. I think you have to lean on the run early to set up the pass, and I really want to see them get the ball in their playmakers' hands. Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert, and DeAndre Swift in space. So when they do throw the football, everything doesn't have to be down the field. Create plays to get the ball in your playmakers' hands in space so they can pick up that yards after catch. But we're spending a lot of time talking about the Eagles' running game. I think the most important thing is for us to stop the Tampa Bay Bucs running game. Bucs have a horrible rushing offense. They are the 32nd out of 32 NFL teams. They can't run the ball. Philadelphia Eagles, back in Week 3, held them to only 41 yards rushing. But you were talking about an Eagles defense back then that held everybody through the first 9 games under 100 yards, with the exception of an overtime game against the Commanders, an average of 66 yards against. The last 8 games, every single opponent has rushed for over 100 yards. This defense needs to make sure that they turn the Tampa Bay Bucs offense into a one-dimensional offense. Take away the run early. Set up 3rd and long. Make sure that you don't put yourselves in bad spots, because we know how good Mike Evans is. We know how good Chris Godwin is on the outside. You got to establish that you could stop the run, make them one-dimensional. I think that'll help that defense a lot.
All right, so, Adam, that scares the hell out of me, because then you're throwing into a defense, unfortunately, that has not been so great also at stopping the pass game. So Baker Mayfield, move him off his spot. Now, people say, Baker Mayfield. I remind you, Drew Lock, okay? I remind you, Tyrod Taylor. I remember you little snippets of Tommy DeVito thrown into the mix here as well. When it comes to this defense being able to stop that offense for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who do you think needs to step up? And also, Reed Blankenship was trying to test out his groin on the field earlier in the game, or earlier in warm-ups. Stopped doing that after a short amount of time. We'll see what that leads to when inactives come out in just a couple of minutes here. But, Adam, looking at stopping that offense, what do you need to see from this defense tonight for the Eagles?
So it's interesting, right? They're talking about Avonte Maddox playing safety. And one of the things that really concerns me, and Bill hit on it, is I think that Mike Evans is one of the most talented receivers in the league still. The guy's got sure hands. He knows how to run a route. And I don't discount Baker Mayfield like a lot of other people do. I know he left the Browns. He had up and down seasons at the Browns. The guy's a talented guy. He was the #1 overall draft pick. He's a skilled athlete. He's a little more poised. He's a little bit more mature than he was before. You know, my concern is if you give him the time, those receivers are going to get separation on our defensive backfield. And if they get the separation on our defensive backfield, we're in trouble. If they beat us through our middle, through our linebackers, we're in trouble. You know, we haven't seen this Eagles defensive line be dominant, and I will tell you, I do not want Hassan Reddick dropping into coverage. Can we please let that guy rush the damn quarterback? He needs to stay on the field rushing the quarterback. If we get the pressure on, we're going to have a better shot at shutting down that time that he has to pass the ball. We've got these big guys up front, you know, Davis and Carter and, you know, Fletcher Cox, Brandon Graham. Give those guys an opportunity to do their job. You're dropping a guy who's a premier pass rusher back into coverage. That defeats the purpose. So my key, let's get the pressure on him.
I love the pressure, obviously. Real quick, the inactives just come out. I just want to let people know. Reed Blankenship is out. A.J. Brown, as we knew. Sidney Brown, as we knew. Tanner McKee. Moro Jomo is also out. Rashad Penny, inactive again. Tyler Steen, inactive as well. Go ahead.
One of the things, that, I saw Sean Desai do before, he got demoted is Sean was trying to be a little more creative in what he was doing. Now, it's no secret that the Eagles need to be in their 5-man front to clog up the middle to be able to get the run under control. I submit to you, after Matt Patricia took over, they became a worse run defense team in the middle, because there are times where they're always playing this chess match where, first and second downs, you're trying to figure out, do you go, are they going to run or are they going to pass? So you go 4-man line. You go 4-man line, they turn around, they run the ball. You go 5-man line, they're more apt to throw the ball against that because you got one less guy. And what Sean Desai began to do is he started moving Zach Cunningham, shifting him late and moving Josh Sweat down into, you got to put him in position that when Baker Mayfield's going to throw the ball, listen, he only threw the ball 25 times in the first game. They ran it 17 times. He threw it 25 times. Mike Evans only had 60 yards receiving. Now, their chemistry has gotten much, much better, but the Eagles still have got to be cognizant about getting the run under control because then that takes away all the play-action passes and allows them to do some different things on the back end and personnel-wise to be able to get the passing game under control. If Baker has both, and you're not getting any pressure on them because they're running the ball and play action is alive, that's going to make the Eagles' defense's job that much more difficult. Now you got Slay back. Does that mean that you now all of a sudden, you can get up and start playing a little more aggressively at the line of scrimmage? Because Baker's smart enough to know, hey, if you're going to play 8 to 10 yards off, I'm just going to raise up and throw it to him. He can run slants. He can run quick outs. He can run stop routes at 8 yards. And now we got guys breaking down at 12. And if you miss, now they've turned an 8-yard, 7-yard pass into 12, 15 yards. Get them up and play them a little more aggressively. Even if you're playing quarters coverage, and that guy's got quarters on that side, still, I would like to see him up where you at least take away the idea that he might do that and have him bail at the snap of the football.
All right, on that note, it looks like Avonte Maddox with Reed Blankenship being out is going to be playing more of the safety role. He was doing that at practice. Now, it wouldn't be the first time against the Bucs that the Eagles had to make some adjustments. You remember in that Week 3 matchup, James Bradberry had to be playing at the slot position at times. Now Avonte Maddox is going to be dropped back. Do you expect the Eagles then to move a guy like James Bradberry back inside to play slot? Do you use Keely Ringo? Do you use Eli Ricks? What do you do if you have Avonte Maddox drop him back and playing safety?
To be honest with you, I don't know how they feel about Bradley Roby. Ever since Avonte Maddox has been back, he's been kind of demoted. He hadn't played a lot at all. What I'd like to see is that, when you're going to go to your 5-man and you're going to play zone or you're going to drop a safety in the box, drop Byard down in the box because you've got, Avonte Maddox has got really good speed, okay? He's got above average speed, so I like to see him in the hole where he can read and get to balls where he needs to get to them. I don't want to see James Bradberry in the slot. They haven't had success with it, and now you get into a game planning thing where, the offensive coordinator for the Bucs is going to look at certain situations, and now you're going to get a guy like Mike Evans lined up in the slot in order to draw that coverage on James Bradberry. Put him outside. And if you got to give him help, then give him help. However you got to give him help. But I'd rather see Bradley Roby play on the inside against a Mike Evans where he's more skilled and equipped to do that than putting James Bradberry there where he struggled even more so in the slot than he has on the outside.
I'll tell you what, I think the most exciting move that we've had on the defensive side of the ball in maybe this season is trying Avonte Maddox in this game as a safety because of the reasons that Seth said. That speed that he has, and the guy's got football intelligence. He's got a nose for the ball. He can catch the ball. He can make a play on the ball, and he's certainly not afraid to hit. He's a small guy. He's 5'9", $180 something, soaking wet, but the guy's fearless. He's tough. He's fearless, and that type of speed back there is something that we haven't had. And if he needs to cheat over to help out and to cover, I feel more comfortable with him than with one of these other guys.
Here's my concern, though, with Maddox. I agree with you. I think he has the athleticism and the smarts to do it. But one of the issues we've had with this secondary and this defense is they've had a problem with their communication. They've talked about how things were too complicated. They're not communicating back there. Well, now you're going to have Avonte Maddox playing a position he's never played before. I agree with Seth. I'd like to see Roby at the slot, but we're talking about should Bradberry play the slot? Bradberry should be on the bench. And I'm not joking. You should have Keely Ringo starting. Keely Ringo's going to make some mistakes. He's a rookie. But over the last few weeks, we have seen that Keely Ringo is going to battle. He's going to play hard. I want to see Keely Ringo in this game. You have Darius Slay on the other side. You run Bradley Roby in the slot, and our safeties are Kevin Byard and Avonte Maddox. They got to keep it simple.
You want to know why that's not happening?
Because they're paying Bradbury too much money.
There you go.
Follow the money, as always. Follow the money. So that looks at what the Eagles should do defensively speaking. Now when you look at the offense here, I mentioned earlier, look at a couple of things that you want to see from the Eagles in this game, and I mentioned that you got to have a guy like DeAndre Swift have a huge game for the Eagles tonight running the football. 16 carries in that Week 3 matchup. Would love to see him even more than that tonight, and perhaps even more touches. I believe he only had one reception in that game in Week 3. I also need to see a very efficient game from Jalen Hurts. When you break down what Todd Bowles likes to do with his defense, it's very similar to what you're going to be seeing from a guy like Wink Martindale from a week ago. Blitz, and when you're done blitzing, blitz a little bit more. You did not see your offensive line against the Giants last week really step up and start to block that blitz well. They did not shift protection well. Jalen Hurts did not get rid of the football well. Seth, how do you break it down as an offense if you see that type of aggression that you saw a week ago from Todd Bowles in this defense against Jalen Hurts? Do you see him checking down more? You mentioned that earlier. Do you see more runs to establish early to protect Jalen Hurts and also understand where the blitz is coming from? How do you see it broken down in this game?
Well, I think the most important down for the Philadelphia Eagles is going to be first down, because this is what plagued them the last couple of weeks. They don't get anything on first down. They run the ball 1 yard, 2 yards. Now, the really good defensive coordinators, they're like, okay, you have the option to run it or pass it on second down, but we're going to come after you. And we're going to play the run on the way to the quarterback because you like to throw the ball, because we want to get you even further behind the chains. We don't even want to give you the opportunity to get to 3rd and 3, 3rd and 1, where you could take advantage of your tush push. I think the Eagles are going to see even more of that tonight. And so I think the most important down for the Eagles offensively tonight is going to be first down. And their ability that even when you do want to throw the ball on first down, because I think you have to be balanced in how you do that, you can't just come out and run it every first down, run, okay? Even though I want to see them run the football. You have to throw the ball on first down every once in a while just to mix it up and keep defenses honest. But not deep throws down the field. I'm talking uncovers. If you got a zone, if Jalen reads zone on first down, that ball should be going to Dallas Goedert across the middle. Somebody ought to be sitting down in a hole in the zone somewhere to get 4 or 5 yards, and let's be satisfied with that, okay? So that at least on second down, now you're forcing the defense's hand. You want to come after me? Okay, that's fine. We still have the option to run or pass it. We can get 3 or 4 more yards to get to 3rd and short, or get a first down on second down if you want to come. We're going to adjust our routes. We may even run the ball at you and hope that we get into a 3rd and 1 situation where we can get to the brotherly shove. But their mentality and their mindset about how they want to play this game, it must change. They cannot keep throwing the ball on first down. The worst thing, the last thing I want to see is the Eagles come out and throw the ball 5-6 times in a row to start this game, their first offensive possession. You just can't do that. You cannot do that, because you're sending the message that, yeah, hey, you might be ranked what? You may be ranked 28th against the pass and 6th against the run, but at the end of the day, we're going to make you play honest football tonight. No matter how good you are at one thing and how bad you are at the other thing, we're going to make you play honest football all night tonight. We're not going to make ourselves one-dimensional. We're going to force you to make us one-dimensional, you know? And I just think that that's the way that they have to approach the game tonight. It has to be a shift. If they think that they can keep doing business as business has been done for 18 weeks tonight, you're wrong. You're just not going to have a chance to win this game if you continue to do it that way.
And you started the show asking, is Nick Sirianni's job in jeopardy? Mm-hmm. And the only way I could see it being in jeopardy is if they come out again without any plan to protect Jalen Hurts against this blitz. Last week, Wink Martindale. Everybody knew Wink Martindale was going to blitz the Eagles. He blitzed them 83% of his dropbacks 2 weeks earlier. They did not have a plan for the blitz. Everybody knows Todd Bowles is going to blitz the hell out of Jalen Hurts tonight. He did it in Week 3. He did it 2 years ago in the playoffs. If Nick Sirianni and Brian Johnson don't have a plan tonight to stop the blitz, then I think Nick Sirianni's job should be in jeopardy, because it'd be criminal.
I will say this. I know we all enjoyed watching the Cowboys lose, and we, of course, opened the show by talking about that as well. How about them boys, of course. But when you look at what happened in that game with Matt LaFleur's game plan going into that game, we're going to take that ball, we're going to march it down the field, they're going to run the ball 8 times, get down the field 75 yards, eat up clock, announce their presence with authority. I watched that entire game, and as much as I basked in the enjoyment of watching the Cowboys lose, and my 4-year-old daughter walking in the room and go, "Oh, good, the bad guys are losing," and I'm like, she gets it. Good parenting. I look at it the other way. I was marveling at the job that Matt LaFleur did with that offense in Green Bay. Obviously, the execution was incredible, and you want to see the Eagles do that. But Adam, the idea was there. And so many times, we haven't had that opportunity in Philadelphia to be able to look at Nick Sirianni, look at Brian Johnson, look at this offense as a whole and say, oh, this is from start to finish, this was a well-executed game plan. It started with the game plan. It started in the meeting rooms, and you saw it out there on the field. We saw that with Green Bay and how they attacked the Dallas Cowboys. What is your level of confidence looking at the Eagles right now that they'll be able to execute a good game plan?
They got to run the damn ball. They got to run the ball. So, look, you want to keep the other team off the field? Run the ball. You don't want to throw 2 pick sixes? Run the ball. You've got to run the ball. You've got DeAndre Swift, who's the most underutilized, talented back we've had in a long time. You've got Kenny Gainwell, who's shown that he's got the ability to rip off yards, and he just keeps his motor moving. I didn't see we've got Boston Scott. Rashad Penny will be getting somebody Gatorade somewhere. But you've got to run the ball. If we're not running the ball, we're going to leave Jalen open. He's got 15 interceptions on the year. We're going to leave him open to make one of those stupid screen passes to a wide receiver underneath, and something dumb's going to happen. If you run the ball, I've got high confidence that we'll execute the game plan. But the question is, whose game plan? Our game plan, the 4 of us, look, if we're coaching it, yeah, I think we run the ball a lot. We control the clock, and we march down the field. And like to Seth's point, we get first downs and first down after first down after first down. But if we come out and we start looking for the lottery ticket and throw the ball downfield every play, we're in trouble.
So there's been so much that came out of this locker room the last couple of weeks. The conversations from players, the cryptic messages, and all of that kind of stuff. Jordan Mailata was asked about running the football and how important it is. And I mean, you're talking about Jordan Mailata. You're not talking about Lane Johnson or Jason Kelsey. You're talking about Jordan Mailata. Jordan Mailata said we have to run the football. Okay. Now I get it. Players are never going to try to overstep their bounds as far as the authority of coaches. Okay. But I've been saying forever, sometimes you have to listen to your players. When your players come off the field and they're telling you, now you got coaches up in the press box. You got coaches on the sideline. They are monitoring everything. You got, Microsoft Surface Pros. You got everything at your disposal. But there's nothing like the feeling that a player brings off, a respected player, that he brings off the field and says, Coach, we can do this. We can do that. We can get this done, And if these players come off the field and they're telling Nick Sirianni that we can run the football and they don't do it, that's a problem. That's a problem. Because the strength of this offense, no matter, you can have Jalen Hurts, you can have A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert, the list goes on and on and on. You can have all the players that you want to. But this team has been built on the strength of the defense and the offensive line. And if you're not going to utilize the strength of the offensive line by running the football, that's coaching negligence, in my opinion.
All right, we're going to come up a little bit later in the show. Obviously, we're going to have our predictions as per usual. But also, John McMullen's going to be joining the show from Tampa. We have a couple other surprises in store as the Malamut Law pregame show continues after this.
Any professional sports coach will tell you there's no substitution for preparation. At Malamut & Associates, that is a tenet by which we live. We prepare from day one for victory. Anything less is not acceptable.